Welcome to This Explainer. I'm your host, the Cruising Prof, and today we're going to cruise through the intensely fascinating historical evolution of the hunger strike. We'll be taking a purely educational look at this powerful tool of nonviolent resistance. Relying strictly on documented historical data, medical records, and contemporary news, we're going to break down exactly what this tactic is, where it actually started, and the key people associated with it over the centuries. Let's get into it. Understanding how the human body literally becomes a vehicle for political change, it's absolutely crucial to understanding modern protest. We're starting with a very recent event from July 2026. You might remember activist Sonam Wangchuk and the Cockroach Janta Party capturing national attention in India. Wangchuk undertook a 21-day hunger strike at Jantar Mantar, demanding the education minister resign over alleged NEET exam irregularities. And as Sachin Pilot noted at the time, quote, "Wangchuk was picked up in a blanket and taken away. The government is ready to go to any extent." That state response, forcibly removing him to a hospital, really highlights the incredible tension these protests create. And this modern flashpoint raises a super compelling historical question, one that we're going to unpack today. How exactly did the simple act of refusing food evolve into such a formidable mechanism for political leverage? How does something so seemingly passive become so incredibly disruptive? Let's get into it. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll start with a modern hunger strike, define the tactic, look at its origins and early adopters, discuss the Irish strikes, examine Gandhi's fasting, and finally, look at the legacy of fasting. Section 1. A modern hunger strike, Sonam Wangchuk's 21-day fast. To really understand this, we're starting with a recent event. According to comprehensive news reports from NDTV and Al Jazeera, climate activist, engineer, and education reformer Sonam Wangchuk recently completed a grueling 21-day fast. And he didn't do this indoors, you guys. He was outside at an altitude of 11,500 feet in Ladakh, literally enduring sub-freezing temperatures. Surviving on absolutely nothing but water and salt, Wangchuk's demands were deeply political and environmental, specifically calling for constitutional safeguards and statehood to protect the fragile Himalayan ecology. And the scale of support was just massive. The Times of India reported that out of Ladakh's total population of about 300,000 residents, approximately 60,000 individuals actively participated in the hunger strike alongside him at various points. To put that into perspective, that is 20% of the entire population mobilized by a single nonviolent act. But here's the thing. These actions carry severe, very real biological consequences. As documented by India Today, during Wangchuk's subsequent evacuation and hospitalization at Safdarjung Hospital in Delhi, doctors warned of critical risks. We are talking about rapidly dropping potassium levels, falling from 4.3 to 2.9, rising ketone levels, and clinical signs of severe dehydration. Despite all of this, he initially refused intravenous fluids. It brilliantly illustrates the extreme physical toll such actions exact on the human body, turning the body itself into the actual site of protest. Section 2. Defining the tactic, strike versus fast. Drawing from the sociological analysis in the book, Bodies in Protest, we can see a very distinct line drawn between different types of fasting. A religious or health fast is generally about self-control, spiritual asceticism, or personal health, usually over a limited, predetermined amount of time. A hunger strike, on the other hand, is strategically designed. It's an act of political protest meant to apply extreme moral and public pressure on a specific adversary, like a government or an institution, to achieve a concrete policy change. Traditional religious fasting, like Lent, Ramadan, or various Hindu fasts, is usually focused on self-control, asceticism, and moral purity. There's no external enemy. But a hunger strike completely flips that. It's sustained, it's explicitly political, and it weaponizes that self-denial against a specific adversary. We actually see early traces of this in the ancient Indian practice of dharna, where individuals would fast right at the doorstep of an offender to demand justice. And there's a remarkably similar parallel in ancient Ireland called Troscadh or Salachalan. Rooted in early pre-Christian Brehon laws, this practice also involved fasting on the doorstep of an offender to demand justice or recover debts. It basically weaponized the extreme cultural importance placed on hospitality. Letting someone starve on your doorstep brought immense social dishonor and shame to the accused. So, the crucial point here is understanding the severity of the methods. Historical definitions clarify that while a standard hunger strike involves the intake of water or basic fluids, like we just saw with Sonam Wangchuk, a dry hunger strike means the participant completely refuses all fluids. From a medical standpoint, a dry strike drastically accelerates organ failure and the timeline to a fatal outcome. It's an incredibly dangerous escalation of the tactic. Section 3. Origins and Early Adopters. Ancient Ireland to the 20th century. Now, you might actually be surprised to learn that historical records point us all the way back to pre-Christian Ireland. Known as Troscadh or Cullicane, this practice was codified in ancient Irish civic codes known as the Brehon Laws. Get this, if someone wronged you or owed you a debt, you wouldn't just take them to court. Instead, you'd sit on their literal doorstep and refuse to eat. Because the ancient Celtic culture placed massive honor and importance on hospitality, allowing a person to starve to death on your doorstep was the ultimate social dishonor. It essentially weaponized shame to force a resolution. Fast forward to the modern era, and the tactic was adopted with fierce determination by the suffragette movements in the early 20th century. Activists like Alice Paul in the United States and the suffragettes over in Britain used hunger strikes in prison to demand the right to vote. The state response to this was often brutal, involving forced feeding and the UK's infamous 1913 Cat and Mouse Act. Under this act, starving women were temporarily released just to recover their health, only to be thrown right back in jail to finish their sentences. Section 4. The Irish Republican Strikes, 1920 and 1923. Historical archives document a stark escalation back in Ireland. In August 1920, 65 interned men began striking in Cork County Gaol. This particular strike captured global attention when the Lord Mayor of Cork, Terence MacSwiney, died after an agonizing 74 days without food. By the end of the Irish Civil War in 1923, the tactic had scaled massively. Thousands of Republican prisoners engaged in mass hunger strikes, protesting their internment without trial, making it one of the largest coordinated hunger strikes in recorded history. This intense period of protest in Cork was eventually called off after 94 days by Irish leader Arthur Griffith. Recognizing the extreme physical devotion of the survivors, he issued this really poignant statement, telling them that having been prepared to die for their cause, they must now prepare to live for it. Actually, fun fact, the survivors of that 1920 strike hold a Guinness World Record for the longest hunger strike without forced feeding. Section 5. Gandhi and Indian Independence, the Weapon of Ahimsa. When we think of hunger strikes, we invariably think of Mahatma Gandhi, right? According to fascinating health records published by the Indian Council of Medical Research, Gandhi's lifelong experiments with his diet and his frequent, prolonged fasts often drove his physical condition to the absolute brink. While he was remarkably resilient and maintained an active lifestyle, these records show he was chronically underweight and his fasts repeatedly brought him dangerously close to death. So let's look at where it all started for him. Historical literature shows that Gandhi's very first deployment of the hunger strike in India was in 1918. He intervened in a dispute between mill owners and workers in Ahmedabad. To strengthen the dejected workers' resolve and prevent them from turning to violence, Gandhi undertook a fast unto death. And you know what? It worked. The strike held, and the owners eventually conceded to a 35% wage increase. Looking at his 18 formally recorded fasts reveals incredible variation. They ranged from shorter 3 to 7 day fasts for penitence, moral lapses at his ashram, or local labor disputes, all the way up to a grueling 21-day fast in Delhi in 1943. He undertook that one at an advanced age to protest British detention policies during the Quit India movement. But Gandhi was very precise about exactly why he fasted. In his selected letters and published writings, Gandhi framed the hunger strike not as a crude weapon of blackmail or coercion, but as the ultimate expression of ahimsa, or nonviolence. He wrote that a votary of nonviolence feels impelled to undertake a fast as a protest against societal wrongs only when absolutely every other remedy has been exhausted. It was a deeply moral appeal to the conscience of the adversary. Section 6. The Legacy of Fasting, Post-Independence and Beyond. It's really important to note that the tactic crossed ideological lines. It wasn't just utilized by those strictly adhering to Gandhi's specific brand of pacifism. Revolutionary figures like Bhagat Singh also wielded the hunger strike to devastating effect. While in British custody, Singh and his comrades undertook massive, prolonged fasts to demand equal rights for Indian and British political prisoners, proving the tactic's universal utility in drawing attention to injustice.
And the potency of this tool didn't just vanish once India gained independence. In fact, it literally reshaped the map of the country. In 1952, a devoted Gandhian named Potti Sreeramulu undertook a hunger strike demanding the formation of a separate Telugu-speaking state. He fasted for an incredible 58 days. Tragically, it resulted in his death. But the ensuing public outcry was so immense that it forced Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to concede, sparking the massive linguistic reorganization of Indian states and the creation of Andhra State.
So, what should we take away from all this? From the doorsteps of ancient Ireland to the suffragette jail cells, from Gandhi's ashrams to a modern Himalayan climate fast by Sonam Wangchuk, the core mechanism remains exactly the same. It is the willing sacrifice of one's own biology to force a moral reckoning. I want to leave you with this to ponder. Considering the sheer medical devastation it causes to the human body and the profound map redrawing historical shifts it has repeatedly triggered, why does the hunger strike remain one of our most persistent, powerful, and desperate tools of nonviolent resistance? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable history with me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.